Hello, everybody. God damn it. My name is Matthew. I'm joined tonight by Spartacus.
Yeah, Matt cursed in the first 10 seconds of the video, so we're getting demonetized.
And 24 hours late is Ronan down there in Memphis.
I mean, no one would know that if it wasn't for you, having to blurt that out. Just like no one would know that you've already cursed this recording attempt with your bullshit ass,
I feel like everyone...
cornfield internet.
See, I feel like everyone needs to know that you always flake out on us with your dumb job. Everyone must know about that. This is Jupiter's CROCK, everybody. Welcome. It's been a while, guys. It's been a long time. When's the last time that we did one of these shows?
About 2 months ago, I would assume.
Okay, so we are about to embark on the final season of Spartacus. This one's called War of the Damned, and I was assuming like we're going to have, maybe 5 more episodes of recording, and then we were going to be done with this series, but then something happened. A piece of news broke. Ronan, what was the news?
We've done it, lads. We've done it. Our shitty podcast campaign to get more Spartacus has worked. Somehow, we got the attention of stars, and there is a new Spartacus show coming out. Woo! Have mercy. We've done it. Good work.
And it's even the kind of show, I'm pretty sure, didn't we, pitch this idea?
Yes.
It was brought up in a commentary in the last season, and we mentioned it in one of the episodes, because Matt and I have both seen that commentary track where they talked about, drum roll, a hypothetical Elseworld story about what would happen if they actually beat Spartacus and Asher had gotten what Glauber had promised him. And the show would have been called The House of Asher, which 10 years plus years now, they're deciding, you know what, let's do that.
Yeah, it's awesome. And they're bringing Nick Terabay back as Asher, which is fantastic. So yeah, I can't wait to see more of this show. I'm glad that they're going back to the well. I'm glad we're getting more Asher because he's fantastic and perfect as a villain. Before we get into the first episode of this season here, Enemies of Rome, I guess I'll just give you guys, ask your thought. What do you think this new sort of House of Asher is going to be, number one, about? And then number two, do you think there's going to be any characters from the previous thing, other than obviously Asher himself, that are going to Elseworlds either survive or come back in this new show?
I mean,
assume.
Go ahead, Ronan. Go ahead.
Yeah, since Matt didn't ask who was speaking.
Yeah, Matt didn't lead into who was supposed to speak, so that's failed.
I wanted to see who the alpha was and who was going to just step up.
We both did.
We've already decided based on TV size that Steve is the beta male. So
That's true.
I would assume possibly members of the Asher Strike Force. Like they could come back into the fray.
Yeah, he tried to get them to swear an oath to him in his final episode, so that could be it. I mean, there's no. I mean, Spartacus, I would assume, has to die. There's no reason that Crixus and Gannicus have to die as well. Matt and I talked about this the other day. How interesting and also how fucked would it be if Gannicus and Crixus were recaptured and forced back into slavery somehow?
I was just thinking that just now.
How fucked would it be if Asher ended up with authority or power over them? I mean, Asher could kidnap Navia and use her to force Crixus to call him Dominus. There's all sorts of amazing, interesting, and terrifying things they could do with this new show.
Yeah. If they want to get really twisted like that, I'm here for it. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and it could always do something where maybe they do have Spartacus is sort of still alive, but maybe it takes place earlier in the timeline, before all of the gladiators are on. What was the mountain they were on, Vesuvius or whatever? Yeah, trapped up there. Maybe it happens, earlier than that, and so we still do have all of these characters. But yeah, I'm trying to think what Asher's ultimate goal was, right? So obviously he wanted to be the head of the Ludus, but Asher is going to be seeking even greater glory. I think we're going to go into a territory with Asher trying to get into like the Roman Senate and shit
So
like that.
that would
wouldn't
just-
it be awesome if this
I don't-
ends with Emperor, like Emperor Asher or something? That'd be amazing.
I'm here for it, but at the same time, I don't want him to just assume Badiatus' previous plan.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, is
On the one
Xena coming
hand-
back from this?
man, I don't know if that could. Yeah, I don't know if she is or not. That'd be weird. But she was promised to him, wasn't she?
Yeah.
So maybe.
Yeah.
Technically, yeah.
And keep in mind, like, all of these actors that we'd be talking about are, it's over 10 years later. So they're much, much older than they were before. I don't know how well Manu Bennett and Dustin Clare have
God.
kept up on their workout routines. I mean, are they still, like, the ripped dudes they were when they were in their late 20s? I don't know. But I can't wait to see this show. I'm so glad they greenlit it. And they didn't give a date, so there's no sort of tentative date. But I would imagine we'd probably see this in 2025. I would imagine. And of course, all of the CG and stuff is way better now than it was back then. And yeah, I can't wait to see Asher manipulate his way to whatever he's going to do.
Part of me hopes they keep the same shitty CG. Maybe we'll get more of the show if the budget is low.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, House of Asher, everybody, that is coming, and of course, we'll be here to watch it week by week and do a review of it and a discussion of it whenever it does release. So, let's get into episode 1 of Enemies of Rome here. This is the final season of Spartacus: War of the Damned. And before we get into sort of like the plot and the story of this, I did watch the audio commentary track for this, and this was the first episode here was supposed to be the finale of season 3, and ultimately what they decided was that whole season would just be Spartacus and Crixus and Gannicus constantly winning, and they felt that there was no way they could create any sort of drama historically because all he did was win, and so they realized that, hey, we got this first episode is going to be the final episode of what was planned is just going to be the first episode of the final season, and that was kind of what pushed them to end the show. And I was actually curious about that because I always thought, I was like, why did they end this? It seemed like it was fairly successful, and it seemed like just very quickly they decided to end the show, but apparently it wasn't because of low ratings or anything like that. It was just they felt creatively this was the best path forward to end the show. So, and at the end of the season, maybe we can revisit whether or not that was a good idea or bad idea. But Enemies of Rome, Ploticus, take us away.
All right, I'm gonna try. Again, we were supposed to record this yesterday, and then Ronan bitched out, so I didn't get to rewatch it. And also, I forgot we were doing this tonight, so I'm high on allergy meds, so I've got to get through this quick. I'm gonna need you guys to fill in the blanks because I'm probably gonna miss some shit. But building off of what Matt said, like there was a whole like unplanned or a whole planned season where Spartacus was just going to win everything, and that got 7-2 offsuit. That got turned into basically like a 10-second I don't know, not flashback, but just like a voiceover and text over that essentially just says, it's been 6 months since Glaber died. Spartacus is just like winning all over the place. Spartacus is winning everything. And so now he's like killed multiple like Roman commanders, and that's where we're at now. So we actually get into the show in the middle of another war with 2 Roman conqueror commanders named like Cosinius and Furius, I think. But so Spartacus is actively like fighting them, and it's not going well. And so Spartacus's forces are winning, and Cosinius and Furius are like, all right, let's regroup somewhere else. And then suddenly Spartacus just runs up on horseback directly into a big group of Romans, gets himself surrounded. And so, military mastermind Spartacus, brilliant tactician, he knew that the Romans would think no one is dumb enough to just ride into the middle of their camp and get themselves surrounded. They'll never see it coming. And so, of course, that's what he fucking does.
I thought that when I watched that, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing that Spartacus could possibly do. But I think that this is, I don't know if it's a critique yet, because I've just watched the first 2 episodes, but this leads to what I'm feeling is a critique, where Spartacus and even Crixus and Ganx, they almost are portrayed as superheroes so far in this season, where they just, I mean, they can just slice people's heads off with no, and they can do whatever they want to do without any sort of repercussions. I don't know if it's a critique yet, but I'm feeling this was that initial, like, Spartacus is a superhero moment. Like, there's nothing that can be done to stop this guy.
Yeah, so his brilliant plan to catch the Roman people unawares by getting himself surrounded by them goes off without a hitch. His horse doesn't
no
make
one
it.
expects his plot armor strategy.
Yeah, his horse gets killed. So, R.I.P. Spartacus' horse. But as Spartacus is fighting off these forces, here come the rest of Spartacus's seconds and thirds and fourths in command, and they wreck the Romans, and Cassinius and Furius get away, and Gannicus and Agron and everyone and Crixus are all like, we killed more Romans. Oh, it must be a Tuesday. Like, they are just loving life at the amount of Roman blood that they are spilling. But Spartacus is like very, very like angry. He's unhappy because he wants to get like the commanders. It's like, killing Roman soldiers means nothing at this point. We need to take out the commanders, and so he's very angry that they got away. Spartacus is kind of just a sourpuss throughout this whole episode. So Cassinius and Furius go back to wherever they're staying. They're taking a bath, and in comes this Roman senator, and he says, they have a powwow about what are we going to do at Spartacus, and the Roman commanders say, we need more people, we need more forces, we need more everything to stand up to Spartacus, and the senator says, we're basically like fighting 7 or 8 other wars. Like, Rome is going broke. We don't have the people to throw at this. Like, you got to make do. And then Cassinius says, what about that Crassus asshole? He's rich. Let's get him to help. And the senator basically, like, all of these guys, the 2 commanders and the senator, know that Crassus has the ability to help. But no one wants to owe them a favor. None of them want to owe Crassus a favor, but they have no choice. It's like we side with Crassus and kill Spartacus, or Rome is going to fall. We also find out that Rome has learned nothing in like the year and a half that this has been going on. Rome has learned nothing because Cassinius and Furius were still treating Spartacus and his forces like it was like 8 free gladiators out on the countryside. Like, and Cassinius has to tell the senator, like, Spartacus is not just like an escaped slave anymore. He is actually like a military commander. He has been adding
thousands of people.
He has added thousands of people to his forces. We cannot continue to underestimate him. But so now they're at the they do say that Spartacus went back and liberated the mines where they freed Navia in the previous season. So there were thousands.
Which he said he was going to do. Remember, because the last season you actually complained. You're like, he never went back and saved them. But they do show that Spartacus did keep his word and go back and liberate the mines.
I wonder if
we
that
just
was
don't
something.
Get to see it.
Yeah, I wonder if that was something that we were supposed to see in the original season that this was going to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Anyways, Rome continues to underestimate Spartacus, and now the Roman commanders are finally catching on that we can no longer fucking do that. And so we see Crassus. The senator and the 2 commanders are like, fuck it, we gotta go get Crassus. And so then we see Crassus, and Crassus has bought a former gladiator, like a former champion gladiator named Hilarius. And so Hilarius and Crassus are training together, and Crassus knew that at some point he was going to get asked to take on Spartacus. And so he's training himself against a gladiator to prep for that. And he's got this snot-nosed little kid named, is it Tiberius is his name?
Yeah, Tiberius.
He's got that classic Roman punchable face.
Yes, he is so punchable.
They cast their villains so great. They just have the punchable face.
Yeah. So in comes the senator, and so Crassus is talking to he has a scene with the gladiator, and there's mutual respect shown from Crassus to the gladiator and vice versa. Like his kid Tiberius is like, this is stupid. We're better than this. You're lowering yourself to the standard of a slave by fighting a slave like this. Blah blah blah. Kid's got a punchable face. In comes the senator, and the senator says, "Hey, we need your help. We need your money first and foremost.
Yeah.
But because in a previous season they name dropped Crassus and said that he is basically the richest person in Rome. So they need Crassus. Hey, we need your money. We need your money, and if you agree to help us, you will be given like a command. Like you will be basically third under Cosinius and Furius, so high ranking, but you will not be in charge." And Crassus is like, fine. It has to be for the glory of Rome. It has to be done. And the senator's like, oh, like I kind of expected you to extort us a little bit. I'm surprised that you're being so agreeable to this. And Crassus is like, hey, the glory of Rome. This has to happen. Like it's not good for any of us. If Spartacus wins. And so the senator leaves to go. And the senator says, I'll send word to Cosinius and Furius. And Crassus says, no. Let me handle this. I would prefer to send my own messenger to let these people know that they will have my money and my forces soon. And everyone agrees to the terms. And then Snot-Nosed Kid is like, what the fuck?
7-2 offsuit.
Yeah! Snot-Nosed Kid Tiberius.
This is gonna suck.
Let's see what happens here.
This is gonna suck a lot.
Oh, no, you're all gonna split the pot because it's a flush on the table.
Oh.
So you accomplished nothing, Ronan. Good job. The snot-nosed kid Tiberius is like, we're better. It continues to basically say like, your dad Crassus, you're punching down. You're allowing people to, put one over on you. But Crassus shuts him down. What else happens at this point?
I'll point out that what is an interesting moment when Crassus is fighting that gladiator is that the gladiator actually like cuts him, like when they're fighting, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and that's when punchable face Tiberius, he really is like looking, because I mean that should never happen, right, in Roman society, that a slave literally had the chance to kill the Dominus right then, and the guy's like, "Oh no, it's cool, man, it's cool."
Yeah, he's like Crassus. I love Crassus. Throughout this entire season, I love Crassus. Crassus to me is like, what if Batiatus knew how to fight? He's not as conniving as Batiatus, but he's conniving enough, and he can actually back it up with like military prowess. So I'm a big fan of Crassus.
He's a more competent Batiatus, because we saw some of Batiatus's plans, especially in like the prequel season, backfire and go horribly awry, or like long term, killing Spartacus's wife. That failed on him long term. Short term that worked out. Long term that failed. Crassus is a long-term plotter, as we are about to discover. It's like he goes along with things, and it makes you think that he's just going with the program, but he is not. You have actually just stepped into his trap that he plotted out for you like 12 months ago.
Crassus is awesome. Big fan to see what he does the rest of the season. Looking forward to it. We go back to Spartacus, and Spartacus is in his tent, and Crixus and Agron come in, and they're, oh god, we killed so many fucking Romans, it's awesome. Like, please, my penis can only get so erect. Spartacus continues to be very stern, like, where the fuck are Cosinius and Furius? We need to kill them. And Crixus and Agron continue to be like, look, dude, we're winning. It's fine. Like, we got this. And Spartacus is like, no, we don't got this. We have to take out the commanders. Oh, by the way, where is Gannicus? This is kind of the start of Spartacus expecting more from Gannicus. Right now, even though everyone else in the camp considers Gannicus to be a leader, Gannicus does not. Gannicus sees himself as just a soldier. And so he is not, he's not acting as a general or whatever. And so, but Spartacus wants that of him, and it's not happening. So Gannicus did not give Spartacus his report. So what was Gannicus doing? He was off having an orgy. And then
We had a very in-depth discussion about what is and is not an orgy.
Well,
It's
this is an
4
interesting
people.
thing, right? We could talk about the Tubi situation for anyone who's listening to this that wants to watch Spartacus on Tubi.
Well, hurry it up because we got an hour
Yeah,
time limit on
continue.
this recording.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to roll into it since you were the one that initially found it. But I'll go ahead and say it. So Steve told me, hey, guess what? I think there's an I think Tubi's got edited versions of the Spartacus episodes. And your thing was like the sex and violence seemed to have been cut out. I went and I looked at it. It's absolutely true. Like whatever version that Tubi has or got licensed to or they agreed to put up there or whatever the stars gave them is literally cut down. Like the Gannicus orgy scene is there's basically no nudity in that at all.
It's like it's like a bunch of fast cuts of like softcore porn as opposed to the several minutes of orgy that we get in the actual DVD.
Even
when
the
I
violence.
That's what
cut out.
first clued me into it because the first like segment of this episode is like a war scene, and there's a scene where like one of the Romans has like a staff with like a gold like eagle or bird sculpture of some sort on it, and Spartacus like grabs it and breaks it. In like in my head I'm like, okay, he stabs a guy with this, right? But in Tubi, like that never happened. Like you see him grabbing the staff and then it cuts to like there's blood on the staff, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. Something is wrong here. And yeah, so that's what clued me in. And then the orgy scene, like it's just a couple of seconds of very very fast like epileptic cuts. It turned. I mean, it's an orgy, so there's not much substance to begin with, but it turned the scene into like nonsense. Long story short.
Because it's not even mentioned. Like it doesn't say, "Hey, this is an edited version of Spartacus." When you fire up the episode,
no, not at all.
It's weird.
Yeah, and on my DVD, this episode is 51 minutes. On Tubi, it's 49 minutes. So there are at least 2 minutes of cut content in Tubi, and it was all like the orgy scene and the early violence. Yes, literal sex and violence. See, if you're going to watch this on Tubi, I mean, it's free. But it's also edited, and I don't understand why, because we have definitely seen titties and violence on Tubi before. So
we've seen butthole on Tubi. So I don't think this is a Tubi thing. So I don't think this is Tubi. I think this is whatever. Like they said, hey, yeah, we'll take Spartacus, and Stars gave them an edited version. And I'm curious, I wonder if Stars gave them an edited version because then they could say, well, come subscribe to Stars and you'll get to see the unedited stuff. But I don't know. It's weird. Very weird.
Very weird. Anyways, Gannicus like spends a couple of days just fucking around. Yeah, because like the way this is cut, it looks like they found Gannicus like a little while later. But when Gannicus shows up, he's like, Spartacus is like, you're several days late. Like, holy shit, Gannicus, what were you doing? But they have kind of a heart to heart, and Spartacus is like, yeah, I want more from you. I want you to be a commander. I want you to be a leader. And Gannicus says, no, I have no desire for that. I am just a soldier. I'm also like only here because I promised Oenomaus. Like I'm still not I'm not as invested in this as you are. And so they continue their conversation. And Gannicus is like, when does this end? Like, the people that killed your wife are dead. You got your vengeance. Like, why are you still here fighting this fight? And Spartacus is like, well, I'm anti-slavery now. I want to protect I want to kill Romans and strike the chains from all the slaves. And Gannicus is like, okay, but to what extent? Like, is your plan to just destroy Rome? Are you going to take out the entire city? And it's very clear that Spartacus doesn't have an endpoint. Like, he's just doing it because he has nothing else.
He's an idealist. Yeah, it's like his ideal, and in theory, he's like, yes, I want to free everybody, but Gannicus is the one that's actually like the realist, and was like, okay, that's great, that's fine, but how are you actually going to like complete this idealistic goal? Yeah,
so they ultimately don't come to any sort of conclusion. they each said their piece, and they're both kind of right at this point. So what else happens here? That's what's going on with them. I'm trying to. There's this episode cuts back and forth between things so much, so I'm trying to piece things together. Let's just
While
talk.
you're thinking,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I was going to say there's a couple notes that I put down here for the audio commentary track on this episode is much better than the second one, and this one is Rob Tappert and then a bunch of people who actually like crew members and stuff, and they mentioned that they used 9,000 liters of blood in this episode, and what I thought was interesting is like this felt way bloodier than even some of the previous stuff. I mean, they actually
Unless
used
you watched it on
practical-
Tubi.
yeah, unless you watched on Tubi. The actress who plays, what's her name, Saxa. She's the one. I guess she's kind of hooking up with Gannicus now. She was the main one in the orgy.
The German. Yeah.
She apparently was terrified of the sex scene because she had never done anything like that before. And so I guess they had to like really calm her down in order to get that thing seen or that shot. And then they shot it for like an hour, and then they realized they needed a lot more for coverage, so they made her come back and basically bang Gannicus for another like 2 or 3
coverage.
hours. Yeah, for coverage.
Get coverage, yes.
Now,
yes.
I don't remember who the lady was, but Rob Tappert said, like, how much of the show, she knew everything about everything. She's like, there's 22 decapitations this year. She's like, there's 60 different throat slits. And Rob Tappert actually was like, well, what percentage of Spartacus actually was sex scenes, because people always give it crap like, oh man, it's just sex all the time, and she's like, actually of all of the screen time, only 2% of the show had actual sex in it. She did note that this season, when they first started Spartacus, they would have like 100 extras, and she's like, of that, maybe 20 would agree to get naked, and she's like, by this season they had hundreds, and she's like, over half of them would get naked, and she's like, basically people would just take their clothes off just to be naked in Spartacus at that point in time, which I thought was pretty funny. And in this scene, I think it might be the scene that you're talking about, Gannicus is kind of basically standing by the front of the tent, like the door to exit the tent when he's talking to Spartacus. That's actually because Dustin Clare had horrible diarrhea during the scene, and so he had to keep stopping and running out and taking a shit and coming back, and it caused major production problems apparently. So there you go. Gannicus had the shits when he was talking to
Good
Spartacus
to know.
there.
Speaking of other things with tents, this orgy scene doesn't even happen in Gannicus's tent. Gannicus is hanging out with another gladiator, and Gannicus
This is my tent.
Gannicus kicks his friend out of his friend's own tent to have this orgy. Gannicus is awesome. Just what a character.
Boss.
Sorry, so
out.
there's only like 2 like big plot points we need to cover. There's a bunch of just a bunch of character moments. Like Navia and Crixus get a moment. Agron and Nasir get a moment. The only character we haven't really talked about yet that's in any way relevant is Kore. Kore. It's Kore. And it is she is Crassus's like I don't know, head slave. Like I don't know the appropriate term here. But she's like essentially like a high-ranking slave within Crassus's household. She is like she and Crassus are very close, and she is kind of almost like a mother figure. Yeah, we'll find that out soon. She's almost
I feel like Tiberius. They kind of they set it up that she might be Tiberius's actual mother. She's very concerned about Tiberius.
Do they?
Very, very. They I kind of got that feeling.
I
kind
did
of got
not get that at all.
Yeah,
All right,
I don't. No, I'm not. Yeah. You're gonna have to sell me on this, Matt.
Yeah, I did not. I never got that at all.
Okay.
Anyway,
go ahead.
we're gonna move on here. Kore is a major character throughout the season, but her only real thing here in this episode is she shows like care and concern for Tiberius. More on Kore as we go throughout the season. But let's cut to like the actual like big moments of the show. So they capture Spartacus's crew captures Crassus's messenger, and the messenger has a note that essentially says, "Hey, Crassus has agreed to come and help you. We are sending 10,000 men to support you. And this message makes it to Spartacus, and Spartacus and his crew are like, okay, we've got to take Cosinius and Furius out now. Like we don't have any time to wait. We cannot fight 10,000 men, and if we don't take out these commanders now, we will essentially be trapped. Cosinius on this side, Crassus on the other side. We've got to kill Cosinius and Furius now. And so Spartacus and Gannicus and Crixus, they infiltrate the villa where these two commanders are living currently, and just kill them. Spartacus decapitates both of them at the same time. He's got a sword in each hand, and
Superhero.
Yeah, remember last season Crixus and Navia talking about how difficult it is to sever a man's head in one blow? Not in this season. There's lots of one-handed beheadings. So anyway, so Spartacus and crew have now killed the two commanders that were supposed to be the big bads of, I guess, the previous season. Cosinius and Furius are dead, and word gets back to Crassus. And the senator, who I think the senator's name is Metellus or something. So Senator Metellus goes to Crassus and says, Cosinius and Furius are dead, which means the entire Roman army that's going to be set against Spartacus is yours to command now. It's weird, but don't you think it's a little strange that your messenger was caught? Why do you think it would be that your messenger chose to take a path so close to where we knew Spartacus was hiding? And Crassus is like, do you got something to say to me, bitch? And Senator's like,
step up, bro.
Senator's like, no, I guess not. We're all friends here. Congratulations on your promotion. And so now Crassus is in charge. Crassus is going to have his own men, and then he's also going to go out and find the remains of Cosinius's and Furius's army and absorb them into Crassus's ranks. And Tiberius is like, you planned this. From the moment that senator came asking you for help, you knew that you were going to do this. You knew you were going to take over. And Crassus's response is something like, we bow to no one. We are the fucking Crassuses. We're the big swinging dicks here. And so
House of Crassus.
That's our introduction to Crassus. In Crassus's first episode, he gets multiple Roman commanders killed and orchestrates his way to the top of the Roman military food chain. Crassus is awesome in this, and I love him, and I'm ready to see more. Yeah, Crassus is Badiatus if Badiatus knew how to fight.
Yeah, he's a competent Badiatus. A long-term plotting Badiatus.
Yep. I was going to say, speaking of long-term plotting, but no, that doesn't make any sense. Let's talk about Horse Guy, because that's the only part that's important that we need to talk about. Spartacus is
Horse Guy.
Yeah, that's his name, Horse Guy. Spartacus is
it might as well be.
Spartacus is watching Agron train the new recruits, and while this is going on, Spartacus looks over and he sees two very sketchy-looking slaves. And I don't know what Spartacus thinks they're doing, but he follows them to a tent where Horse Guy is butchering the remains of Spartacus's horse that got killed in the beginning of the episode. And so the butcher guy, Horse Guy, is just cutting up this horse and giving whatever meat he can to everyone. Essentially, he's keeping people fed. And Spartacus comes into his tent, and this guy, Horse Guy, has no idea that this is Spartacus. But Horse Guy kind of goes on a rant against Spartacus. It's Spartacus is great at fighting. He has put no thought into how he's actually going to take care of us. We don't have provisions. We haven't been provided with enough food. Winter's coming. We don't have any, fashionable jackets or anything. We're going to die to the elements. And Spartacus, the man on the hill, is doing nothing. And then Crixus or Agron or someone shows up. He's like, "Hey, Spartacus, come here for a minute." And Horse Guy's like, "Oh, fuck." But Spartacus tells him, "Hey, as long as you are a free man, you will have the right to speak your mind even to Spartacus, the man on the hill." And this, it's a very small scene in this episode, but it gets Spartacus thinking that he's got to actually start like planning ahead for this upcoming winter. And so I don't remember if it's they pay it off in the next episode, but I don't remember if it comes up in this episode or not. But Spartacus now has to like find like just a city. Just taking over a villa is not good enough. Spartacus's plan from this point forward is to find a city to essentially wait out the coming winter.
I love this scene. This is probably my favorite scene in the entire episode, honestly, because I love the idea that he's got tens of thousands of people now that he's liberated, but no one would really know what he looks like at all, right? It's not like they could turn on the television and they see Spartacus there talking or anything. Like, none of these people have any clue who he actually is. It's more about the idea of Spartacus, right? And we actually see, maybe it's the next episode, but we actually see that there are people, slaves everywhere. There's like Spartacus, like they worship him as a god at one point. And I think even Gannicus mentions like these people are starting to think you're a god, but what happens when they realize you're just a man, sort of thing. But I love the fact that, that horse guy is able to sort of bring that kind of humanity back to Spartacus a little bit. And it's like, okay, we got to show that he is a good guy, right? He's got to provide for all of these people now. So I love that scene for sure.
Yeah, Horse Guy is awesome in his short stint in the show.
Spoiler.
This whole episode is great. I really, really enjoy this episode. Not thrilled with like the tactical genius of several people in this episode, but I think this episode does a great job of like kind of setting the stage. Like Spartacus at this point, it's not just good enough to take over a villa. He's got to start thinking big if he wants his war to succeed. On the other side of the aisle, we see Roman scheming at a level that we have not encountered before, and we're going to see how those two forces clash throughout the rest of the time here, and I'm looking forward to it.
What are your thoughts, Ronan?
Yeah, I've got some little some tidbits.
Some titties?
Some titties?
Some titties. I got some
Titty
tidbits. Yes, some tidbits. So the two guys, Furious and Cassinius, like those two guys, they state that they are praetors, but historically speaking, these two are actual historical figures that fought Spartacus, and they were praetors. But this was the first time when Spartacus encountered them that he was actually sent up against genuine Roman soldiers. Because this was the point where Rome had because Rome had sent several praetors. There's a scene in Spartacus's tent where you see all these eagle statues. Those are Roman standards, and they belong any Roman a praetor or consul who is given these standards. They're important seeds of power. So that's supposed to be a nod.
And when they're stolen, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and so the fact that Spartacus has 7 or 8 of these is supposed to you get the sense that this show is trying to shove a lot into 5 episodes.
It's like Steve with his Transformers. He's got this great collection of Roman standards.
It's true, these two praetors actually served 2 Roman consuls. Who, again, this was the first big time Spartacus had encountered, actual Roman legions. And it was, the consuls were Publius and Valurus. Valurus. That's hard to pronounce these fucking names. But they are actually also, historically, the first people to deal the Spartacus revolution, to deal the Spartacus army. Its first actual loss. It comes from these 2 consuls. They're the first ones who actually kick his ass. So the fact that they're just not mentioned at all, and they just we'll use as praetors instead. It's bizarre. It's an interesting. I don't know why they did that. Historically speaking, at this point too, Spartacus's army was somewhere. It's estimated by the Roman historians. Admittedly, this is 150 years afterwards is when they were making these kind of estimates. But it's estimated he had 70,000 fucking soldiers in his command at this point. But everything that the senator was talking about early on, about how we're dealing with these pirate wars over here. We've got this uprising of the rogue imperators up north. This is all historically true, and this is why Spartacus was able to do what he was able to do for as long as he was, because Rome literally didn't have the money or the men to actually stomp him out, which is why they got to the point of desperation that they were in, to have to send Crassus after them. So what happens in the next episode, taking a city, that actually happens a lot earlier in the Spartacus War, because it happens where Spartacus does just take over a whole city for a couple of months, historically speaking, but it's not at this point. It actually already happened, and he'd already moved out and was just going along, taking over other stuff at this point. So they're just it was a big incident, so I guess they wanted to do it, but their timelines are all kind of fucked off. It's kind of like if you watch the show Narcos on Netflix. A lot of that stuff is accurate, but they move the date of when Pablo does things all over the place. But there's also a pretty big historical inaccuracy that we see kind of early on in this show. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. It's going to keep popping up in several episodes.
Are you telling me that Gannicus didn't kick someone out of his own tent to have an orgy? Because I bullshit. In my headcanon, that happened.
We'll address this. We'll address fucking in another man's tent in another episode, because I just don't want to spoil the surprise yet. But that's some of the historical tidbits at this point. Is that his army was very large, but I don't know why they decided to cut out the Roman consuls who Spartacus actually was fighting, because they're the first ones to actually make Spartacus run.
They may have been in that original idea for the third season, right? And maybe they're just look, it's just repeating stuff at that point. So we show them win, but then they're going to lose, and we just go on and on and on. So I think they just tried to compress everything as much as they could when they identified this was going to be the final season.
Yeah, it's also because Gannicus and Spartacus are having, Steve brought it up, they're having the talk over, okay, well, what are you going to do? There, a lot of stuff in the Spartacus Rebellion, the Spartacus Wars, a lot of it is up to interpretation, because shit like that just wasn't recorded very well. We know he beat at least 8 or so different battalions of Roman praetors. But all over Italy, there are these small little towns. There are these hills. There are places all over Italy where their claim to fame is, oh well, this is where Spartacus had his great victory against such and such, and that's literally it. There's that's the only reason it's known to history, is because these towns say it happened.
Well, the people, if people watching this are well, why because this went on for quite a while, multiple years, right, of Spartacus running around and doing this shit.
2 years. The show seems to make it out it's 6 months, but no, by this point it would have been at least 2 years.
But in today's world, people look at that well, I don't get it. Why didn't they just send the military to go wipe these people off the map immediately? But that's not how it really worked in ancient Rome. A lot of times, for example, they don't go into the nuts and bolts of it, but Crassus, they would need rich assholes that would pay to get soldiers, because the soldiers wanted food, they wanted weapons, they wanted all of this stuff, they wanted to be taken care of after they won the battles and things of that nature. Most of the Roman soldiers that we kind of think of, the classical stuff, they were not in Rome. For example, soldiers weren't even allowed into the city of Rome. And I know, down the road, there's a sort of big historical question of why didn't Spartacus march on Rome? Because he had the opportunity at one point, but then they broke away. They chose not to do it when he literally could have just walked right in. The Roman military was a mighty, mighty force, but again, they were usually on the outskirts of the empire, just trying to in the Republic, trying to keep all of the the people they've subjugated outside of what we now know as Italy at bay. They didn't think that there was going to be necessarily uprisings within Italy proper, and then how long it takes to get messages to the front lines when you're hundreds of miles away, and then to organize thousands of troops to try to like move back down, and with the weather and stuff, it was not a quick process
Ancient
like it would be necessarily
warfare
today.
was complicated.
Yeah,
is what
yeah.
you're getting at.
Exactly.
I mentioned all of this just to, like, as Spartacus's motivation. I mentioned all of this because, like, about how it's like, well, there are details that we don't know, but basically one of the very few details that we know very well, because Spartacus made his intent very clear. His goal was to fucking leave Italy. That was the goal. He kept moving the army north, and it was Onimus and Crixus who kept telling him, no, we need to raid these countrysides. We need to sack this village. We need to invade this town. There's more loot, because they had it in their minds that they were tribal kings, and tribal kings, like, they got their power based on loot, horses, and women, more or less. And so that's what they wanted. They wanted more loot. They wanted more stuff, and a lot of the slaves too, they were born in Rome. They were born in Italy in the Roman Empire. The idea of going home to them was alien. It was foreign. Like, even if their parents were like, oh well, like my father was a Gaul and my mother was they were born in Rome. They had no fucking clue what it meant to go home. Rome was home. They just didn't have like Romans like whipping them anymore. But Spartacus, he was a foreigner. The Romans brought him there. He wanted desperately to go home. So that's one of the few things that we know pretty certain. It's like Spartacus wanted to go home. He wanted to take the army across the Alps, disband it, which would have been a huge, that in of itself would have been a huge fucking kick in the dick to the Romans. Like, oh, you lost 70,000 slaves to this guy, and now they're just to the wind, and you will never get them back. That would have been a huge kick in the dick to them. But most of his soldiers didn't see it that way. They just wanted more loot, and Spartacus was having a hard enough time because most of these people barely spoke Latin, and that was like the only language that the bulk of them shared was a very broken Latin. So it was very hard to do what they were doing. And Spartacus lived in constant fear of the day that they would actually encounter disciplined Roman legions, which is why when they eventually sent consuls after him, he did start losing. Even losing didn't convince his troops that they needed to leave. Matt's right. At one point, the army suddenly randomly turned south and started heading back to Rome. I don't think Spartacus actually thought he could have done it, because Hannibal stormed the gates of Rome for like weeks and couldn't get in, and he had siege engines. He was trying to take down like the walls of Rome. Spartacus probably knew better, but I don't think he had any choices at that point. But that's some of the historical I've got for you. Is those guys were historically accurate, but they served under two consuls. Spartacus did actually beat those consuls using like clever tactics and leading them into places where they couldn't, because he was a wily little fucker. The Romans, even once they decided to take him seriously, they still didn't really take him seriously. He was still able to outflank them and move them into areas where he could just pick them off pretty easily, because his slave army was not very well trained.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff also was Roman hubris, right? Like, Romans wouldn't even allow themselves the belief that a bunch of slaves could go around and fuck shit up like that. And it's even reflected in this episode, right? Tiberius is like, look, that gladiator's nothing to us. They're below human, essentially. Like, they couldn't even get it into their minds that this could be a possibility, and so they never really took it seriously until they had to. But yeah, so overall, I thought this episode was really cool. I love it. My only kind of quasi-complaint is the superhero nature that all of our gladiators are now. I don't remember how far into the series that kind of goes, but I loved sort of Crassus. I love that we got this really cool villain, because, I mean, seriously, you got a lot. You have to bring a lot to the table to live up to a lot of the previous villains in this show. And so I really like that Crassus comes out to be like, okay, this guy is not someone to be fucked with. And then when you realize, especially when we see who's introduced in episode 2, and it really struck me as like, okay, all of our people are gonna die here. Like, I gotta start prepping myself because you're not gonna fuck with Crassus and the individual who appears in episode 2 here. So overall, I like it, and maybe that's where House of Asher goes, right? Because in theory, you know, Crassus is alive during House of Asher, right? I won't spoil who's introduced in the next episode, but that individual's alive during this time. You got a lot of weird, interesting characters you could play with that Asher might have to interact with going forward. But that's it, everyone. That's it. Steve's about to run out of time on his recording here, so next week.
Yeah, I was waiting for you guys to wrap it the fuck up for like the last 15 minutes.
I didn't know we had a time limit anymore.
Yeah, so there you go. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Jesus